Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much for joining me here today. This is your one-stop shop for cryptocurrency analysis, among many other things. We're taking a look here today at NEO. This is a technical analysis. There's no fundamentals here, but I do always recommend you do your own research there, of course, because the fundamentals is a big part of what gets altcoins to do so well. And this one has really good fundamentals too. I've done my research. Time to do yours. Now, I'm not a financial advisor. This is for educational purposes only. Again, I'm going to recommend you always do your own research. And just know I have years of trading experience, and my goal is to help you become a better trader and to trade for a lifetime, not just for one day. Okay, so you're going to learn a thing or two here today if you stick around. Also note that I have a Telegram community. Feel free to reference that in your own time. It's a good group of folks there. And also, I have a link in the description below too for my Patreon account, whereas I send out 2 to 4 signals per week. These are signals of the trades that I'm taking and that we are all learning and growing together from in my Patreon community. So really good group of folks there too. And feel free to reference that again in your own time. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get right to it. All right, folks, let's go ahead and take a look at NEO. And just before we do, we always look at Bitcoin and Ethereum first to get a baseline on the market so we know exactly what's going on. Okay, so we'll take a look at that first because a well-informed trader will make well-informed decisions. Makes sense, right? All right, so let's go ahead and take a look here. First and foremost, I use TradingView desktop application, tradingview.com. Recommend the paid version. Any one of them will do because the primary one is frustrating because you have to keep adding and removing indicators. I have a free month in the link in the description below if you'd like to check that out, of course. But bottom line here is that the moving averages is what I utilize on the 4-hour chart. That's the simple moving averages. So they're basically there's a 200 and the 50. The 200 is this purple line here. The 50 is the orange line. And just note also that Bitcoin currently has major support and resistance levels. Right now we have a major support of 30,000, secondary support at 37,000, and a tertiary potential support at 40,500. This was tested a few times and broken just today. However, it hasn't closed yet on this 4-hour chart. We still got about an hour left. So if that closes within the next hour above 40,500, then that would essentially be considered above support. All right, so that's the new support level. And as you can see, we had this ascending wedge pattern that broke out. What's lovely too, and it happens quite often, is there's this fake out when these wedge patterns break out. So ascending triangles commonly will try to break down just before they break up. The inverse applies too on a descending triangle where it breaks up and then shoots down. I just thought that was really cool that that had happened because I would say more often than not you'll see that happen. And I think I mentioned that yesterday in one of my reviews. Regardless, that's kind of the state of the nation here for Bitcoin right now. The next major milestone, I guess, would be somewhere in the range of about 51,000 and or about 46,500. Or you could just say, round number 46,000, 51,000. Those are the two next nearest, major resistance levels. All right, so that is Bitcoin. Let's go ahead and take a look at Ethereum. Just to quickly note, we have a resistance at 2,900. This is a major resistance, was tested about 10 times previously, so it could very well be broken if Ethereum goes on a run and Bitcoin gets closer to just say 46,000, 51,000, then we'll have that be the case. Major support at about 1725. Current support, but again, potential resistance is 2,400. Now I say that because the fact that even though, yes, it's above right now, it hasn't closed above. Until it closes above, it's not officially considered a support. Keep that in mind. Prices above both moving averages. We had a golden cross here previously, and things are looking peachy keen here for Ethereum. Moving on to NEO. Let's take a look here at NEO. So first of all, we always look at the one-day chart to identify big picture and its average true range, right? Because the average true range is probably one of the most important things of understanding where a coin's going to go based on where it's been so far, right? But we want to look at where it went before the major Bitcoin sell-off. So when Bitcoin was doing well, 30, 40, 50, 60,000, this is what, NEO was doing this when that happened. But if we look at the major sell-off from Bitcoin and we identify that, that's kind of the cutoff point for the average true range. So take a look here. So April 17th was the first major sell-off, right? So April 17th is this guy right here. So this is the first major sell-off for Bitcoin. In fact, you can see how hard it ramped up. So the first sell-off from Bitcoin, when Bitcoin went south 15-16% in one day, NEO did almost the exact opposite. It closed, 25% the same day, and the following day, it dipped and it ranged upwards about 64%. So, it closed two green candles there, but what it is, it got too high, too tall for its britches, and to retrace back down. Then, of course, April 22nd was like the second major sell-off from Bitcoin, and it came down. And a lot of good altcoins that have good fundamentals, like NEO, for example, did this little ramp up when Bitcoin went sideways. Okay, so that's pretty standard, pretty normal. And then, of course, we see this retracement here, May 12th, the Elon candle, thank you very much. And, of course, China candle here for the finance industry. And it's been kind of just history since then, right? I mean, it got down super low. Its lowest point in the recent past is about $25.50, which is crazy because a lot of people invested upwards in the $100 plus range thinking it was a good value because this was just taking off. Now, it could very well take off again. Keep that in mind because right here, April 18th, let's take a look at that. Bitcoin was at approximately 56,000 on April 18th. Okay, so that just gives you perspective that when NEO was at its almost highest point, Bitcoin was not at its highest point, right? So it's a good thing to understand. Now, when it comes to the average true range, it's kind of just a variable, right? I mean, you could technically run a calculation through and figure it out, but it's not safe to be able to include the most recent data. So simply put, before all the craziness here, let's just go with kind of an average range here. I would say anywhere between 41 upwards of 120 is the average true range. I know that's large, but if we split the difference, we're looking somewhere in the range, around the range about 75. So Bitcoin, just say Bitcoin continues to go sideways right now. Will NEO, jump up to 75? Probably not. It'll get to 75 if Bitcoin jumps up and hits and surpasses 46,000, then on to 51, right? Those are the things we want to look for. Because again, NEO does well with Bitcoin when Bitcoin goes sideways. And even when Bitcoin goes down, NEO does well too. But that was before we had this major fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the industry. Okay, that's why we've seen solid green days since then. Since Bitcoin surpassed 30,000 or went below and it came back up above. You can see that right there. But either way, NEO is looking very well, very good, and I see great things in NEO's future here. You are the one, and essentially what we're looking at is what we got a good $30 worth of range. I think $75 is very possible. That'd probably be a major resistance, of course, but that is very possible for NEO to get up to that point within the next few weeks. Again, if Bitcoin can continue to do what it's been doing so far, on its projection, on its road to 50,000. Right, 51,000, whatever you want to call it, 50 plus, we're going to see NEO take off. But 46,000 plus, I think NEO will jump up as well. It'll probably split the difference, land somewhere in the 50 to 60 range. Looking at the RSI, 67, still good. Got more room for growth here, even still on the one-day chart. We had a major convergence on the 22nd. I typically like to mark that, but that is a pretty normal convergence. I mean, pretty much every single altcoin converged on the MACD on that day, just based on the simple fact that the price was so low for so long, and then it came back up very strong, very fast for Bitcoin. Looking at the 4-hour chart here, we have a interesting coincidence, but you see this here, and we see this is what referred to as a golden cross. Again, I don't like to put a lot of weight into it, but when these two lines intersect, when the 50 intersects upwards to kind of go through the 200, then it's commonly referred to as a golden cross. So that could be another reason why the price is just ramping up right now. It could also be an indication of the fact that we might still see some more price movement in the near future. I personally feel and would rather like to see the price action go sideways for a little bit and then up again, because any good bull run will have a staircase pattern, right? We want to see this. If we don't see that, then there's a good chance it could retrace down about 50% of the way, which is okay too. That's normal. That's fine. But the bottom line is that any retracement, any major retracement after with no sideways consolidation price action will typically retrace about 50 to 60% of its original starting point. So we could see the price come down to about 36.60 in the near future if Bitcoin goes south. Of course, if Bitcoin goes below 40,500, then we'll see this retrace. If Bitcoin stays sideways for right now, then NEO will probably go sideways too, and then eventually ramp up on its own. Looking at see your RSI up over 70, fantastic. We don't need to worry about selling. This is actually good. I commonly recommend when when the RSI is up over 70 to not just have that knee-jerk reaction to sell your position. Obviously, if it's overextended, maybe, but let's see how much of an extension this is. So, okay, that's kind of high. I mean, we're about almost 25% in the last 12 hours. So I would recommend that, I guess it depends on your position, right? If you're going long and you're holding on for days, weeks, don't even worry about it. But if you're planning to, take some profit, now would be a good time. But I usually always like to recommend this too here. Keep this in mind. wait for the RSI to come back down instead of when it's going up, right? You almost always get a little bit more percentage out of that, and I think it's recommended. So I would say wait if you're going to trim your position. And then also we got a convergence on the 30th, which is obviously today at 5 a.m. So we'll just quickly mark that as well. So convergence, where are you at? So on the 30th, 5 a.m. All right, obviously this guy here. So just kind of mark right in the middle. And I like to mark that too because we've got both convergences on the MACD here on the 1-day chart and the 4-hour chart. We'll see how that translates over to the Ichimoku Cloud on the 1 hour. And if you're new to the channel, the Ichimoku Cloud is essentially just an indication of a, it's basically just telling us good buy signals or sell signals. So if you look back here, you know, anytime the price is below the cloud, it's considered a sell signal, right? So sell, sell, short, etc. Same thing here as well. Big surprise. Got a bunch of buy signals here. Buy, 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 and force buy. But what I'm trying to get at here is that when you look at the convergence on the MACD of the 4-hour chart, and you see that crossing, the 12 intersects with the 26 in upward fashion, you know, kind of like a golden cross, so to speak, for EMAs. When that happens, you can see this happen right. That's what happened right here. That is basically a buy signal for a long position. In other words, a swing trader's best friend is the MACD chart. Correction, the MACD on the 4-hour chart. Okay, so when we look at the Ichimoku Cloud here, you can see the price is above the entire time. But in retrospect, this would have been a good entry point. Any one of these points would have been a good entry, including this one right here, the convergence on the 4-hour chart. So I like to just show that to you because the MACD was telling us we have a buy signal right here, and the Ichimoku Cloud was also telling us we have a buy signal. Because you see how the price came down and bounces off the cloud? It's no coincidence, right? It's working as a support. It happens a lot. So that's the cloud and how that works. Now I'm venturing to guess too, if we look at the TD sequential, which is another indication I prefer to use on the 1-hour chart, we're going to see the state of exhaustion. Big surprise here. Okay, so if you're new to the channel, TD sequential is time to mark sequential, one of the better indicators out there. You got to do some research on this one, of course. There's a lot of moving parts, but the bottom line is that you're looking for a 9. And what that just means is when you have a 9 on the chart, specifically the 1-hour chart on TD sequential, that's telling us that we have a sell signal. In other words, there's going to be a reversal, right? So if we see here, we count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Essentially, each one of these candles is higher than the 4th previous one before it, right? That's how it counts up. But what usually happens is once we hit the 9, this is a state of exhaustion. You should usually expect to see some sideways action or a retracement come back down, right? So if you see back here, you see, look at this, you go from 1 to 7, and then it comes down and retraces. We could very well see the same thing happen here. Okay, again, in theory, is it 100%? No. Is it increase your probability of this happening though? Yeah, of course. I mean, we look at the history, we look at the the time frame that we just looked at. It's overextended. It needs to retrace and or go sideways. That's all there is to it. If it continues to go up, that could happen. Don't get me wrong. It could pump right now based on depending on if Bitcoin is doing the same, which does look like Bitcoin is doing the same. Bitcoin is pumping right now. Okay, so keep in mind those are catalysts that you don't really have any control over. But the bottom line here is that Bitcoin is experiencing a state of exhaustion too, right? So it shouldn't hypothetically go any higher. It should go sideways first and then higher, right? At least that's what we would prefer to see. Because again, like I say, we want to see any good bull run. It's going to be like one of these, right? Nice staircase. You don't want peaks and valleys. You want a nice level staircase. All right, so that's kind of what to look for. Moving on to the 15-minute chart. Let's just go ahead and quickly identify the EMAV Web. And these are my 2 favorite indicators. Just as a day trader, traditionally, these are the ones that I use all the time. I use the EMA 15, which is the red line, and the blue line is the volume weighted average price. Takes the volume last 24 hours and expresses it as a price. So right now, big surprise, obviously the price is extremely elevated right now. It's telling us that the price should be $37.54, whereas the price is upwards of $42.36. So that's a variance. Keep this in mind, that's a variance of 13%. Anytime you have a variance over 10% from the price action to the VWAP, it's cause for concern where it should likely retrace and come back down. Okay, so again, another indication of the fact that this will likely either be a good consideration for a short or just the simple fact that it's going to go sideways and you want to expect that. If it retraces, don't be surprised. EMA is also telling us that we are in control. The bulls are in complete control. When the price is above EMA, it's considered a bullish trend. Below, it's considered bearish. Okay, so I guess just to summarize here, 1-day chart, NEO has tons of potential, right? I think we identified just loosely that 75 is kind of splitting the difference of the average true range, and that it should reach upwards of 75 if Bitcoin can get upwards of 46,000 plus. But right now, when Bitcoin is doing 40,500, kind of testing that, we don't even know if it's confirmed as a support level yet. We want to give it a little bit of time. Yes, there's a chance that we could get more pump out of this, and that's likely. But I do think NEO will take off on its own, so to speak, if Bitcoin can go sideways. I just don't know how much more it can do right now. It has potential. So my prediction, you could say, is 75 within the next 2 or 3 weeks if Bitcoin can continue the same progression it's continued, because you got to keep in mind that most altcoins are exponential in the sense of the fact that they move exponentially from Bitcoin. In other words, you see this spike right here. I mean, if we look at Bitcoin, that candle is not that long if you compare that with NEO, right? Because it took, what, almost a full week, or maybe just say 10 days for NEO to be like, okay, I'm ready to go ahead and come alive now. Whereas Bitcoin's been alive the entire time, right? But once things catch up and we get that consistency in the market, we're going to start seeing things like this here. So NEO could pump, very much so, absolutely. But will it surpass 75 in the next couple of weeks? Probably not, unless Bitcoin can continue to slowly increase and not digress and go down to 30,000 or trend towards 30,000. We need to stay over 40,500 to have any luck with the NEO moving forward. And this is the main reason why we look at Bitcoin first, right? We got to look at that and understand the big picture. And these are all the things that I utilize in my Signal group too. So if you want to check that out, please feel free to consider that. Again, I have a Signal group through my Patreon account. Link in the description below. We have a fantastic community there. We're growing. We're actually 20 plus already. And I can tell you that it's been very profitable. We experienced about an 80% success rate so far for the trades. And again, I'm just utilizing what I just showed you in all of my trade sessions. And I share my trades with you through that account. So you can kind of take place in that, so to speak. We win together, we lose together, but overall we average a successful trading style. Either way, if you find benefit from this, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Feel free to pass this on, and obviously do your own research. Keep that in mind. There's good fundamentals here for NEO as well. So without further ado, we'll see you in the next video. I'm going to end this call. We'll see you soon. Take care.